The spirits are out, and I mean all the spirits. Good, bad, evil. Oh yeah, and especially the evil spirits. It's been a week of anger as President Ruto battles the ghosts, some apparently clothed in holy gear. A contest over the right to give, or is it to receive, continues well into a month as the church and the Ruto state square it out on offerings. But the president is also concerned about the spirit of rejection, the spirit that rejects the Adani deal, the spirit that rejects housing, healthcare, even when some of those spirits have not stepped in any airport. We're on the runway to gauge all the wind speed of the spirits. And is it transfer season already? Well, President Ruto this week fielded an entirely new lineup of attackers. Out goes Kimani Ichung'wah, in comes Junet Mohammed. Silent goes Moses Kuria, and in comes Ali Hassan Joho. It's a Kenya Kwanza ODM combo on the news gang. On Jamila's memo, it's a bag of promises that never stops giving. Sam Sense sees no sense in the reckless vacuum at the country's electoral management body, IEBC. Kai Kai's kicker is back with a corner kick on patriotism and a glass of wine. On my take, some piece of advice to British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on how to convert a minister to an advisor or chairman of a state corporation. The news gang is here.
Kuna pepo chafu ya upingamizi kupinga kila kitu. Kiwanda kama hii watu wanaipinga. Affordable housing wanaipinga. Chanjo ya ng'ombe kuondoa magonjwa wanaipinga. Mambo ya universal health coverage wanaipinga. Mambo ya afya wanaipinga. Sasa mimi nauliza, hii pepo chafu, nafikiri hata imefika wanapinga hata matoleo kanisani. Jameni.
Hashtag Newsgang at Citizen TV Kenya. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Kai Kai, it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Nice to be back here.
While you've been away.
Yeah. Tell me.
Kai Kai, while you've been away, not the Baba while you've been away. A lot has happened. Jamila, maybe you want to bring Kai Kai up to speed just give us a summary. I mean, the president is not happy, to say the least. What's happening?
The president was speaking in Taita Taveta 2 days ago. That was on Tuesday. He was there for the launch of a project by Devki Steel Mills, a project that is supposed to benefit the people of that area. And of course, they were there, many of them, wakimsikiza. But then now, the story turned from being a project that is supposed to help the people to the president lamenting about how projects the serikali zinakataliwa. He talked about, you heard that soundbite, akisema mambo ya mapepo, talking about how even hicho kiwanda kinachozinduliwa maswali yataibuka. He talked about affordable housing and inapingwa. He talked about chanjo ya ng'ombe. It's a recent one that's being introduced by the government. They're saying university funding is an issue. Anasema, so anasema miradi yote serikali moja inakataliwa. And it seems to have really irritated the head of state, kiasi cha kwamba amezungumza hivi. And I'm trying to remember the last time that he spoke this way, and nothing comes to mind. And I remember when he came on the podium for this event, he had a speech, but first alizungumza off the cuff, akasema mambo yote, and then he went back to his speech. And he still continued about how people are celebrating about the cancellation of the Adani JKIA deal, and he's saying why are people undermining the Kenya Kwanza government projects. And a lot of people would say part of the reason is sometimes they don't really understand what these projects are all about. Even I think we have a trust deficit in this country. And I think the trust that the people have in the government, in my opinion, is hanging by a thread. So much so that even if it's something that is good for them, watu hawataki kusikia. And it's because of past experiences in terms of one, the communication on things are being introduced. Sometimes you don't hear enough. Sometimes you feel like you're being told a bit too late. There are instances when people feel like things are being shoved down their throats. We can give an example of the affordable housing. Public participation said we didn't want it. It still went on and it was introduced. The SHA, the malalamishi about it, people asking NHIF iko sawa, mbona tunabadilisha? Why are you introducing something new? And even if we are, why don't you take time? Remember, there was a deadline of 1st of October. Lazima mukwe registered. The university funding, there was the help that used to work before. Yeah. Yes, there were issues. I'm not saying these things were, the ones that were there before were perfect, but there could have been better ways for them to be introduced. Even the Adani deal. Remember in the beginning when it broke, there were denials about it being there until the government could not deny it anymore. So all these things culminate in a whole environment of hatuamini chochote ambacho serikali inatuambia. And people now have an avenue to air out their frustrations. Social media. Watu wanazungumza. They're talking about how they're not happy about this or that. They're talking about how they don't want this implemented or that. But at the end of it all, Yvonne, nani anawasikiza? Yeah. Because these projects are still being implemented. So the president's frustration, I think, stem from the fact that mbona chochote ambacho kama serikali tunatangaza haikubaliwi. Why are we not receiving your overwhelming support that they expected? I think for him, this was a point when I think hiyo kusemwa, kukataliwa from every quarters imejitokeza, including by the church. Remember, they've been very scathing attacks against him. Paka pesa za matoleo zinakataliwa pale kanisani. So I think for him, in culmination of vitu vingi ambavyo vimekuwa vikitokea, na akaona
And that's an interesting one because I think people were wondering where this all came from. Because he suddenly seemed to be, I mean, you know, he mentioned a raft of issues, like Jamila has said, from, you know, all the deals, plus what's happening with the church. Sam, it's been a heavy week, I suppose, that has led up to that outburst. And we'll come and talk a little bit also about what he said again today in Kilifi, right, because once again, we heard sort of the same rhetoric from him.
Right. And obviously, with the latest about the equipment scheme, the new equipment scheme that they are talking about, and we'll listen to that clip just a few minutes from now. So you have the president, I think there was an article that was written by one of the papers in the country early in the week talking about what looks like it's sharp billions going to some mysterious suppliers who are the ones that are providing this service. And I was speaking to one of the governors who has been keen on this implementation of the equipment scheme, the new one, which is, they are saying it's sort of placement of equipment at the health facilities across the counties. And they're saying, remember there was once the medical equipment service under the presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta, where you have that suppliers brought equipment to the country. It was on lease arrangement, and counties would pay a certain amount of money. Rather, the money would be deducted at the national level before those resources are sent to the counties, and that's how they're able to recover the money. And it was supposed to be for 7 years. I think it was extended by a couple of years after that. Now, the situation is that much of the equipment has actually expired. It's no longer useful in the counties, and therefore the counties still need to continue offering services. So they are saying that there are different options, and the best option that they have taken is to ensure that you have vendors procuring equipment, delivering at health facilities. Then the health facility is able now to offer the services. So the servicing of that equipment, for instance, if you're talking about CT scan, it is the vendor who is going to service. It is the vendor that is going to supply the consumables. But now once the social health authority is making the payments to these counties and the facilities, the money would go to the vendor to just take care of that particular service. So you find that it's an interesting arrangement that the government has come up with, but then there are questions that are being asked. Who are these people that are supplying this equipment? Who are the vendors? What was the process that was followed? I don't know if we have that clip that you can listen to what the president was talking about governors and how mjinga they would be for them to sign up for that arrangement.
Anybody who says they were forced by the national government to sign whatever contract, those are conmen and they are liars. Because Mungaro is here, Abdul Samad is here, Fatuma is here, they are governors. There is nobody who forced them to sign any contract. That is the truth. Nobody was forced. And nobody, you have to be a fool to be forced to sign the wrong thing, and you actually sign. Wewe, you know, and you go and announce that I was forced. Kwani wewe ni mjinga kiasi gani?
So that language, first of all, is disconcerting. I mean, we've not been here, and if we have, not for a very long time, to hear the president speak like that, it says a lot about how things that are being reported in the country, things that are being spoken about in the country. And you will understand, especially if the president feels that actually what is being spoken about in the public space is total lies or it's misleading, you may understand that he's not happy with it. But that language is a bit, again, an issue there. But now, I think the bigger challenge here, because for sure, Kenyans, when they go to the hospitals, they want service. They want to be attended to. They want to be diagnosed properly. And after that, they want to be given the medication. They want the prescription drugs that are available, that are affordable, at least paid for by the Social Health Authority, because now this is the new scheme under the Universal Health Coverage. So Kenyans would not be bothered by how that service gets to them. But now when you have questions that are being raised about the process that was followed to identify these vendors, I think there needs to be some proper communication which has not been done. And I know the president and the government has been on this for quite some time on how to transition from the managed equipment service to now what the governors and the national government are doing in partnership. But then where's the communication? Who is talking about these things? Because when you're just waiting to hear information coming in as if it's being leaked, of course, when information is leaked, you believe the source up until you have an alternative source. I think the best way out of this is just proper structured explanation of what is being done, what is the justification, who are these vendors, how much is the cost of this, and what are the options that the two levels of government are looking at, so that eventually you say that the best value for money is through the process of placement of equipment in the hospitals.
You know, what is interesting is it would seem that I think the common thread with all of these issues, from the university funding model, Adani, Shah, you name it, is process, is how. So how did you arrive at Adani taking over JKI and Ketraco? How did you arrive at, the SHIF, say, deductions, for instance? How will those deductions help, those who are paying for them? What was, the thinking arrived at with the university funding model, and many others. And what would be interesting in this country is over the last couple of months, people are raising questions over these issues. It would seem the president has adopted a thin-skin approach where he would this gets him under the skin with just about everything that is being questioned. He's being questioned by taxpayers. He's questioned by engineers. He's questioned by doctors. He's questioned by nurses. He's questioned by aviation workers. He's questioned by airport authority operators. He's being questioned by governors. Surely, where is the problem? And all of them, it's not personal critique or personal attack against an individual. All of them are asking, how? What is the process? What does it mean? Why am I making these payments? For instance, the handover or the shift from NHIF to SHA, could that have been done in a smoother way? These amounts of money, where are they going? How much do they cover? Why do we want more? Remember, even with SHIF, for instance, in the beginning, the question was, and we had the then Cabinet Secretary for Health here on Newsgang, the justification then for the shift to SHA, SHIF, was that there was massive corruption in NHIF. And then, of course, that shifted from time to time. With housing levy, remember what the initial justification was? This was to provide housing. And then it became that it was to provide jobs. You see, this is why there are questions. But questions don't mean personal attacks, where everybody is asking all of these questions. And I think any critique is supposed to be welcome. By the way, those questions are also coming from those in religious circles, the clergy. But something has really got him bothered, because what we've seen over the last couple of days, Linus, is rather interesting, to say the least.
Yes, and the entrance of spirits. And really the one spirit that the president should make peace with is the spirit of the new constitution. the spirit of the new political environment, it has completely changed what politics used to be. Because both the Constitution and just the general level of awareness of Kenyans is such that they'll raise questions on how they are governed on nearly every issue. On nearly every issue. The Constitution in Article 10 actually encourages them too, through public participation. And I saw one of the politicians wondering why the government has to ask for permission to do things. It's because this is the environment that the new Constitution of 2010 is no longer new, envisioned. And that is accountable governance, a governance that answers questions of members of the public. So there's that one spirit that really the president needs to make peace with. My second observation, if you will, Yvonne, is I think the president keeps a very punishing schedule. In all honesty, he is on the road every day. Every single day, he is making speeches. Now, I'm just trying, and I want to challenge ourselves here. How would we sound if this show was daily? How would we sound if we are to come in tomorrow again? It means we won't have time to think properly about the issues that we are going to talk about. And that is the transition that the president also may need to make. That of balancing politics and that and the role of chief executive of the country. Right. Chief executive will sit in the office and actually attend to some business. It's not rally after rally after rally, because we're seeing, the observations made here about anger. It's all arising in the field, in rallies. Because if you are to keep a similar schedule, you will pick a lot of arguments on the way. And that's what the president is doing. He's literally arguing with everything and everyone on the way, and it's getting him worked up. Yesterday it was spirits, and then today it had to shift very quickly to medical equipment. And this is partly a problem of the schedule that he's keeping. And because he could very authoritatively, probably even using the same words, talk about these things, but in different settings. What he's getting into is, because of the schedule that he's keeping, which looks like a political event as opposed to an executive event, you will end up having this kind of arguments and having statements that some may not sit well, because this spirit thing, for example, is just showing anger. And even the equipment, the medical equipment remarks today also showed a worked up president who seemed very upset, either by the allegation that, that by some of the governors that this was forced on them, or by any other details that none of us around the table would know. And so this schedule is going to produce anger, is going to produce arguments along the way. One time you're arguing with governors, the next you'll be arguing with church leaders. And I see a big role on the schedule because it's really tried to keep the schedule of the former presidents. Not the last two, but third from now, and former President Moi used to really be on the road every day. But he needs to realize that this is a completely changed environment. Even the population then was, even the environment, single party, even the population would expect leaders to visit them, and it's a big deal. Something has changed about the population, and naturally it has. Yes. You're talking to a more enlightened population. You should consider, if out of the 7 days, can 4 be for executive duty and 3 be for political duty.
Yvonne, I think on the same note, Linus is saying, what do people really want? Because he's asking, wanataka nini? Why are they rejecting everything? Yvonne, most people just want the basics. They want to have food on their tables. They want to have a roof over their heads. They want their children to go to school. They want to have health care. And the reaction that we're seeing now is because a lot of the policies that we are seeing are affecting people directly. Wewe mwenyewe moja kwa moja na kuathiri. For instance, the pay slip. You're seeing your pay slip probably shrinking every single day. And that is the pay slip. Sio wewe peke yako na jamii yako pengine mnatumia. Maybe 3-4 other households.
Right.
Kwako, kwa mama yako, kwa, jamaa, familia. And that affects you directly. So that's why you see people speaking out against it, Yvonne. And I think what needs to happen is start listening to people a bit more.
Yeah.
Because wanapiga kelele kila mahali. As I said, now people are more woke. They have platforms where they can speak, they can vent out their anger, whatever they inawakera, kwa sababu inawakera wanasema. I think it's about time to start listening. What are the people really saying? And act accordingly. Because this situation is getting, I think, a bit too intense, in my opinion. Because anything that the government posts, let's say on social media or online, the reactions are almost 90% negative. Kiasi cha kwamba hutaki kusikia na question too. It could be something good, as I said. But then now, kwa sababu ni serikali imesema, hatutaki kusikia, it doesn't matter.
But Jamila, I think, that just ties into what Linus was saying about if you're always talking and you're always speaking, you will hardly have time to listen. And perhaps sometimes it would just be to take a step back. Because, like we've said, everybody from different backgrounds are speaking. Is the president then discounting all these Kenyans from different backgrounds, from different faiths, from different, economic cadre? Think about it. Are they all possessed? Are they all wrong? No one says we don't want a revamped JKI. It's the process and the cost that people are questioning, for instance. We're a more engaged, more informed citizenry that is questioning more. And I'm sure that is something that people are experiencing, not just maybe for the president and, the citizens, but even in households. I mean, any parent will tell you children are now more engaged and, question more some of the decisions that are made in the household. And so these questions are going to come from all quarters, including, and I'd like us to now move to, the religious sector. And again, they have been foot on the pedal with that one. Before we get into that, Sam.
Yeah. I just wanted to highlight something because the president really sounded disturbed by the many questions that Kenyans are asking or appearing to oppose every program that his administration is implementing. And I'm just looking at, for instance, the Social Health Authority stroke SHIF, the program itself. And I think majority of Kenyans are just concerned about the value for money, because if you have to look at the amount of money that you contribute, 2.75% of your income, whatever it is, whether you're employed, whether you're in the informal sector, or unemployed, once the means testing instrument has been put in place. First of all, remember that previously you have tried to ask the questions as to who are these people that you have transferred from NHIF to the Social Health Authority, how much are you projecting that you're going to collect, so that you're able to even make an assessment that if the plan is to have 148 billion shillings from SHIF contributions, those that you have transferred, now I understand the figure is about 15 million, how much is going to be collected from that, so that you're also able to plan for the resources. Those answers have not been forthcoming, and it's even at the highest level of the Ministry of Health. If you talk about the contribution itself versus the benefit package has been an issue of concern, because you're talking about, yes, you make the contribution, but at the same time, you're not covered for cancer screening. If you have a chronic illness, for instance, diabetes, you're only allowed to do the sugar control check, HbA1c, I think that's the name. It's only covered up to 4,000 shillings once a year per household. It's not possible because sugar control is checked every quarter or every 3 months. So if the household, you're just covering one person, but you've made a contribution of 2.75%, assuming that is both the mother and father are working, that contribution versus the package, I mean, you don't see the value for that. But these are questions that nobody is responding to. If you're talking about the question of eye checkup, it's only 1,000 shillings that has been allocated per household. There's no value for money there. If you're talking about dental, you're talking about 2,000 shillings in the package, but it's not available immediately. They're saying that it's available upon availability of the budget. So these are questions that Kenyans are going to ask. Whether it's in good spirit or bad spirit, those questions will have to be asked. If you talk about the affordable housing program, which has been effected by the Affordable Housing Act of 2024, again, so the contribution is standard, 1.5% of your income, whether in the formal sector or the informal sector. But when it comes to the benefits, those that are employed beyond a certain band of salaries, you don't exactly benefit. You're told that your benefit will come from affordable mortgages, but you have already paid the taxation. So there's no value for that investment. Recently, the president spoke about some, I think it was 4,888 houses that are already complete for the social housing program as well as affordable housing program. No further information has come since that announcement during the State of the Nation address. And if you have to move beyond that to the vaccination of 22 million cows, this is a program that was announced by the president in May of 2024. And I want to quote him what he said, that maziwa yetu inapatikana traces kidogo. Na ndio sababu tunataka kufanya vaccination. Nataka nieleze tumetafuta pesa, ng'ombe yetu yote, every cow in Kenya, 22 million livestock will be vaccinated and paid for by the government of Kenya. There's been no explanation beyond that. So it has been left to speculation. Earlier on, I spoke to a veterinary doctor who was telling me that indeed there's a problem with our meat products. For instance, an example was given that in 2022 during the World Cup in Qatar, the business persons or the people in Qatar wanted to get some meat, to source meat. They came to Kenya. There was a challenge because it was found that the meat or the cows had suffered from foot and mouth. Now, that is from the experts. But at the same time, making a case for why there should be vaccination, we're even doing the calculations and you find it's a lot of money that should be going into that. You look at the budget, you do not see budgetary allocation for vaccination. So the explanation for where this money is coming from, we are told about 50 goats and sheep that needs to be vaccinated against certain diseases. But then again, who is communicating this? The Ministry of Agriculture. How much have they shared with the people? Because if you don't provide information, there'll just be speculation, suspicion, questions that are not being answered. So the right thing to do, again, just offer the information. And I think time has come to devolve that sort of messaging. It cannot be that every other information has to come from the highest office in the land. Yet you have departments, you have ministries. You
and
have
you have
that's
cabinet
exactly
secretaries.
the point to be made, Sam, because what we are seeing is also inviting questions about the structure of the president's administration. Should he really be the spokesperson of every issue?
Ministry,
Let's take a quick bet here. Name the minister for, the CS for livestock.
Andrew?
Karanja?
Yes.
Okay.
It used to be a lot easier in previous administrations to actually quickly name who is in charge of a ministry. And when you struggle a bit like we do these days, it's not necessarily a problem of the appointees, but probably the environment that they have been given. Are they really free to operate? Are they really free to run those ministries? Is that livestock CS free to talk about every vaccination that you are talking about some? I think the totality of the picture here is there's so much that needs to be reviewed, even in terms of the style of the president. Is he delegating? Is he empowering? Is he releasing his team to be out there? And I mean, even in a moment like this, you'll raise questions about a Ministry of Interior staying for this long without a substantive appointee. Interior is the heart of government, basically national security. And I'll have to say this, how do you get a foreign affairs cabinet secretary to be also the acting in Interior? And I'm just pointing at this as very, very basic managerial point, because the Honorable Mudavadi will be in Baku, Azerbaijan, was it?
Right.
For the COP,
So if something happened in Saku, how would he address that?
You dash from Baku to Saku?
Sako kwa Baku?
Yes, it points to some of those problems, which is why the president seems to be in the front line of fire. He's the first one to take the bullets. I know we talk of...
Maybe he's leading from the front.
Not necessarily. You can do that, but have an effective team in your flanks and empowered. Because there are so many pointers. You see, the other day there was a dissolution of the board of the Kenyatta University.
Teaching and
yes. And that comes from State House.
Yeah.
And then there is the cabinet secretary saying something else, a bit of that. I mean, that should be Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
Feel free, release the Ministry of Health to actually do what they're supposed to do. Release the Ministry of Interior to do what they have to do and all that. Because the moment you, and this is the impression that comes out, that probably the president, what do you call that? Micromanagement. Whether it's vaccination or anything, he is the first person to talk about it. Then he'll have a very, very tiring term. Very tiring, even in just normal human physical terms. And again, to the kind of schedule he's keeping. Very unhelpful, not very useful for the job that he's doing.
In fact, that just reminds me, remember during the housing levy and the debate around it, it was the president who was the major proponent of it. How many of us remember the cabinet secretary, first of all, of housing at the time?
Zachary Njeru never really.
And how many times did he speak about it?
In fact, it was the PS who was speaking a bit.
And remember, even those. Remember when he had the press conference where he addressed the media and was trying to, just sort of answer the questions and. He had a bit of a hard time explaining that. But where was that being done? At State House.
Yep.
And so that just speaks to, the level of management. One thing to just say before we take a break, because I want to come back and talk about, giving and misgivings around giving, is that for a man who himself critiqued the regime of his boss at the time when he was in office, the deputy president then spoke very freely, spoke openly about some of the things that he didn't think were going well under the regime of President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was his boss. And he spoke openly and freely then. Why is it difficult for him to now understand that people would speak about his presidency now? The same way he was accorded, the space to speak and speak his mind bravely and courageously against the man that he was working for. Is perhaps the same way that people would want to speak about how he's managing the country, rather than it being a personal affront. Let's take a break. We come back. We talk about giving, because that just doesn't seem to go away. The spirit of giving, or is it, when we return here on NewsGam?